Hey there, history buffs! Welcome back to the channel where we dive deep into the past and uncover the truth behind the tales you've heard for years. Today, we're talking about famous historical myths debunked. Buckle up, because some of the things you thought were true might just blow your mind. The Great Wall of China is visible from space. Let's kick things off with a myth that's out of this world, literally. How many times have you heard that the Great Wall of China is the only man-made structure visible from space? Well, spoiler alert, it's not. According to astronauts and even NASA, the Great Wall is not visible to the naked eye from space. It's wide, but it's also relatively thin compared to the massive landscape around it. If you want to spot human structures from space, cities at night are actually much more visible because of the bright lights. So, while the Great Wall is an impressive feat of engineering, it doesn't quite make the cut for a space selfie. Vikings wore horned helmets. Next up, we've got those famous Viking warriors, known for their brutal raids and horned helmets? Well, not exactly. Vikings never actually wore horned helmets in battle. This image comes from 19th century opera costumes and artistic interpretations that made them look more fearsome. In reality, Viking helmets were practical, made of iron, and definitely horn-free. Sorry to all the Viking costume enthusiasts out there, but the horns are just a historical misstep. Napoleon was extremely short. Napoleon Bonaparte, famous for his military genius and for being extremely short, right? Well, not really. In fact, Napoleon was around 5'6" or 5'7", which was pretty average for his time. The idea of him being short likely comes from confusion between French and British measurement systems. Plus, British propaganda loved to portray him as smaller to undermine his power. So, while he might have had a big personality, Napoleon wasn't as small as history sometimes makes him out to be. Marie Antoinette said, "Let them eat cake." Marie Antoinette has been famously quoted as saying, "Let them eat cake," when she heard the peasants were starving. It's a pretty shocking statement, but guess what? It never happened. Historians believe that this line was either attributed to her by critics or was taken from a different source entirely. There's no solid evidence she ever said such a thing. In fact, she was largely out of touch with the people's struggles, but she wasn't heartless enough to say that. So if you've been blaming Marie Antoinette for being the queen of cold-hearted comments, it's time to reconsider. Christopher Columbus discovered America. One of the most persistent myths in history is that Christopher Columbus discovered America. The reality? Not only were there already thriving indigenous civilizations here long before Columbus arrived, but he wasn't even the first European to make it to the Americas. Viking explorer Leif Erikson had reached what is now Newfoundland nearly 500 years earlier. And of course, indigenous peoples had been living in the Americas for thousands of years before that. So while Columbus's voyages were significant, saying he discovered America is oversimplifying history quite a bit. The Salem Witch Trials burned witches at the stake. When we think of the Salem Witch Trials, we often imagine people being burned at the stake. But in reality, none of the so-called witches in Salem were burned. Most of the 20 individuals convicted of witchcraft were actually hanged, and one was pressed to death with heavy stones. The idea of burning witches at the stake is more associated with European witch trials, not the ones in colonial America. So, while the Salem trials were tragic and unjust, the infamous burning at the stake, that's just another historical myth. Well, there you have it, some of the most famous historical myths completely debunked. History is full of misconceptions, but getting to the truth can be even more fascinating. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments what other myths you've heard that we should investigate next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Subscribe for more history insights.